Hi, my name is Rachel Lynn, and this is my debt story. So I'm here to tell you how I became $172,000 in debt and paid off over $27,000 in 1 year. So about 1 year ago, I posted my $172,000 debt story. I've gotten a lot of comments, I've gotten a lot of questions, I've gotten a lot of what in the world is her job questions, and so I felt like I needed to redo this story, including all of the information on what my major was, what it is that I do, and all of that, because I really feel like that does make a difference in how my story plays out. At the time of that recording, I did not tell YouTube what it was that I did for a living because I just felt like, I don't know, it was really weird, but I just felt like it was a confidentiality thing, that I needed to keep it to myself, that, I don't know. So long story short, I ended up just telling everybody on YouTube what it is that I do, and now I am very open about the fact that I am a teacher. And yes, I became $172,000 in debt to become a teacher. So let's start at the beginning. I went off to college and my parents promised that they would pay for my college education. Now, unfortunately, my parents couldn't pay for my college education outright at that time. So they asked me to get student loans, and they did not qualify for Parent Plus loans, and so I was able to get loans in my name with my parents' promise to pay those loans back. I trust my parents implicitly, and I know that they will hold up their end of the bargain, and so I had no doubts in my mind about taking out these student loans and going through my education based on what my parents told me. So my first year of college, I actually was a music major. I actually wanted to be one of those people that do like sound mixings on CDs and things like that. And I thought that that would be a really cool, fun job that I would absolutely love because I love music. About halfway through my freshman year of college, I figured out that that was not really what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to be a teacher. That was something that I played school. I played teacher when I was little growing up. It was something that I had always wanted to do, truly always wanted to do, but I always avoided it because I didn't think that teachers made enough money. No matter what your faith is, my faith is very important to me, and I felt like God was calling me to be a teacher, and that I was selfish if I didn't want to be a teacher simply because they didn't make enough money. And so that's why I changed my major at the end of my freshman year. And I know in my heart of hearts that teaching is the right career for me. I knew it at that time. I knew it going through the rest of my college years. And I know it now after being a teacher for several years. I know that this is the right career choice for me. Because I spent a year as a music major, and music majors have a very intense full schedule, I ended up getting a music minor, which doesn't really serve me all that well because I can't teach music. I'd have to have a separate degree for that, so I can't teach music. But it does somewhat help me a little bit to say I have a music minor, because that could help me out in a job because I can incorporate that in my classroom. So because of that intense first year of music classes, and I did have a lot of core classes that I took that year as well. I mean, I started out my freshman year, I was taking 18 hours. I took calculus. I had all these music classes with rehearsals and with orchestra and choir. So I had a lot on my plate my freshman year of college. And since I had so many music classes, I got that music minor. However, even with taking summer classes most of my college years, it still took me 5 years to graduate. I left college with about $45,000 in debt in my name that my parents were promising to pay back. When I received the little pay stubs in the mail, this was a while ago, keep in mind, I got, you know, it's a little booklet of pay stubs that you send in monthly with your check. I sent those to my parents, and I don't know if they ever started paying on it or not, because I know you had to start paying within 6 months, but then my parents actually had me consolidate all the loans that I had into one. Now my parents were paying it back, so I left it up to my parents to decide what to do with it. And then after I had been out of college for a year, I decided that I wanted to go back to school and get my master's. It was required in Kentucky, which is where I live, it was required to get your master's degree within 10 years of teaching. So knowing that I was eventually going to need to get my master's, and I had not found a job in the year since I had graduated, and I'll be honest here, I did not look very far and wide for a job. I looked in my immediate area because I loved living where I lived. I was living in the college town where I went to school. I went to Eastern Kentucky University, and I loved just living there. All of my friends were there, and some kids that I babysat and I was a nanny for, they all lived there. Well, eventually my friends all moved on. Eventually the kids that I babysat, they moved on to different states, and everybody was gone, and I was still living in this college town, and there were a few friends left, but really not that many. This was like over the course of several years, but I did end up staying, and I went back to school and to get my master's because it was something that would be required of me. So when I decided to get my master's degree, I went and I met with an advisor, and for your master's degree you only have to meet with an advisor once ever, whereas in your undergrad degree you have to meet like at least once a year, maybe once a semester, but I think it's at least once a year. But I met once with an advisor, and when they asked me what I wanted to get my master's in, I said, well, I'm not really sure, because all I really want is to just be a classroom teacher. I don't want to be a librarian, I don't want to be a principal, I don't want to be a counselor, I just want to be a teacher. So my advisor said, you should get your master's in teaching. Well, it was my last semester of my master's program when I realized that that was a huge mistake. I did not need to get my master's degree in teaching because that didn't open any extra doors for me. I basically had an upgraded degree of what I already had, and what I needed to get started in teaching, I already had that. It was just like an upgraded version of it, the master's version. What I should have gotten my master's in was something like gifted and talented education, special education, maybe I should have been a reading specialist or a math specialist, something like that, that would give me extra credentials and promote me in doing something more. And I didn't know that going into my master's program, and I didn't know that being a reading specialist would still mean that I could be a teacher. I just didn't know those things, and my advisor didn't advise me very well on that. So that last semester of my master's degree, I ended up taking a gifted and talented class as an elective. I had to fulfill an elective, and that was the one that I chose. And that's the class where I learned that I should have gotten my master's in gifted and talented education. I should have gotten my master's in something else because of the marketability of me and the degrees that I would have had I done something different. So since I had now been out of college for 3 years, I now had my master's, which meant if I went to try to get a job, I would have to be paid more because of my master's degree without any experience whatsoever. So I decided to try to expand my marketability and go ahead and get an endorsement in gifted and talented education. I could do that within a year's time, and that would be above and beyond my master's degree, which is fine. There is a next degree in the teaching field that is called a rank 1, which is, I believe it's 30 hours above your master's degree. I figured that the gifted and talented education endorsement would get me a little bit closer to achieving that rank 1 that I eventually would probably want to do anyway, because it does involve a pay raise in, the steps of how you get paid as a teacher. So I continued my education through the next year and got my endorsement in Gifted and Talented, except for the fact that I don't actually have the endorsement. There is a test that I have to take in order to actually get that endorsement, but it is a very expensive test, much like taking the SAT or the ACT or the GRE, things like that. Those tests are very expensive. This one is called the Praxis, and it is something that teachers have to take, and I did have to take the Praxis to become a teacher, but that was done while I was still in college, and so then I had to take another one, and I didn't want to pay for a really expensive test and then not use the endorsement if I wasn't going to teach Gifted and Talented. So I figured I would only take that test if I was hired as a Gifted and Talented teacher, and I have yet to use that endorsement. However, I do think that having the almost endorsement of a Gifted and Talented teacher has been a little bit encouraging to hiring principals, because they can see that I am going to challenge the higher level students, because I know how to do that with my education. So I think it helps a little bit, even though I can't actually use the degree unless I take the test. So if I'm hired as a Gifted and Talented teacher, then I'll take that test, and I have no fear of not passing that, because I am a pretty good test taker. So just a little bit of studying and catching up should get me what I need, but you know, I'm not even going to worry about it until that day comes when a principal says, I'd like to hire you as a Gifted and Talented teacher. So part of the reason why I went back to school for my graduate degree was to get the degree, but actually, honestly, a huge part of that was because I was offered a job to work as a student worker, and that would help make me some money, and getting student loans would help supplement my income. And so that's what I did. I lived off of my student loans, and it helped me get by. I will say that this was the biggest financial mistake of my life, especially because just last year, the state of Kentucky decided that teachers no longer have to get their master's. And it would have been, just barely, but it would have been within the 10-year time frame. And I would not have needed my master's. Now, I probably would have already started it, because you would have 5 years to get it from the time that I started. So I probably would have gotten it eventually anyway. But it's just kind of like, really stinks. It really stinks. It really does. I do believe that the total amount for my master's degree was about $35,000. So now you're probably wondering, how did I go from about $80,000 in debt, if I include my undergrad, which I am in my total of $172,000, how did it get to $172,000? Well, I spent several years trying to get a job. Teaching is one of those fields where you hear, there are plenty of jobs, there are plenty of jobs. Well, not in the state of Kentucky. There were not very many jobs. I was looking for teaching jobs around 2008 when things were not going so well in the economy. A lot of other people had been forced out of or left their fields that they were in, and they took up teaching, and there were fewer teaching jobs around, because that is one thing that you can kind of pick up. So I spent many years being a sub and just substituting in different schools. Part of that issue was that I didn't want to leave my area. I was looking only in surrounding areas of where I lived, and that was a huge mistake on my part. So all of this time, how was I paying on my student loans? I wasn't. I did not pay a dime towards my student loans. I did income-based repayment, and my income-based repayment was $0 a month. So for years and years and years, my student loans were just building interest, and nothing was being paid on them. When you're in income-based repayment and you have a payment of $0 a month, in my experience, it can be pretty easy to forget that you even have student loans. That's what happened to me. I kept forgetting about it. I had bills that were sent to my parents' house, even though I didn't live here at that time, because it was like my permanent address. The bills came here. The bills were always for $0. I never opened the envelopes. After opening a couple months worth of bill statements and it being $0, I kind of stopped opening the bills and I just didn't worry about it. And so every year you have to renew the income-based repayment, and I would just forget about it. So it would go several months that I went back into the regular payment that I wasn't paying, and I didn't realize it until I started getting a lot of phone calls and go into forbearance. It just kept tacking on the debt and tacking on the debt for years and years and years. Even when I finally got my first official teaching job, my income-based repayment was still $0 a month. So finally, come 2017, I decided to move home. I decided to pay off all my credit card debt and try to save up money to buy my own house. That's when I finally lived at the same address that I was actually getting all of these crazy bills. And I realized I have student loans. And these student loans were in default. And it was not a good situation. So last year, I filmed my debt story. I was scared to death. I had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't even know if my parents were still going to pay back my undergrad student loans because I had just messed things up so badly. Well, my parents and I have worked things out. They are paying back my undergrad student loans, but of course I have always known that I am responsible for my graduate loans. So I have not actually paid $27,000 towards my debt this last year. A lot of that was some fees and things that came off once my student loans came out of default. And then of course I have been paying on them regularly for the last year, so that has really helped as well. So one of my loans was about $60,000 and the other loan was $12,000. These were both graduate loans, and I saved and saved, and I was able to pay off that $12,000 loan, which had come down to about $10,000 by the end of the year. I was able to pay that entire loan off, and I only had the $60,000, which had actually come down to about $50,000, thanks to completing rehabilitation and getting out of default. I have now paid off even more, and it is currently right around $45,000 of debt that I have left to pay on my graduate loans. I can't even tell you how many times better I feel compared to where I was last year. Financially, I feel like I'm already at peace financially, and I was able to cash flow so many things last year. I got a new bed, which greatly decreased my back pain that I was having because my bed was so old. It was from when I was in high school. And I had a major car repair, and these things came up and I didn't have to worry about it because I finally have my finances under control. So that is my debt story. I don't know if this provides more detail, if this is too much, if it's not enough, I don't know. If you have any questions about my debt, about how I've paid it off over the last year, check out my channel. Look at what I've done this past year and you'll see how I've done it. But if you have any questions, leave them down below. I would love to answer any questions that you might have. So please leave me a comment down below and let me know if you are in debt, and if you are, how much you have left to pay off. Please like this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you are not already, and watch me get out of my student loan debt. I'm also on a journey to lose some weight along the way, so you can join me along for that as well. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.